Coming to you from the shadow of the multiplex cinema in beautiful Maryfield, Virginia, where I believe Flight Plan with Jodie Foster is unspooling at this very moment. It's the Fairfax Sports Report. My name is Greg Wyshynski of the Connection Newspapers. Alongside me, of course, BJ Kuberulis of the Connection Newspapers and Jeff Graham of the Connection Newspapers. And tonight, we have football news and notes. We have volleyball news and notes. We have field hockey news and notes. And we have a little bit of discussion about some controversy in a neighboring county involving Gatorade and Powerade and all those good things here on the Fairfax Sports Report. It's another fun-filled show. You may notice we're in a bit of a different environment tonight. We're over on the auxiliary set, as it were.
Oh, I thought this was new apartment.
No, actually it isn't. And I do find it ironic, by the way, that we've covered Marshall football so extensively, and now they moved us into the Marshall football studio.
Of course, the Marshall football colors. This is actually, like Jeff Graham put it, my tree fort.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Tree Fort A.
Fantastic. And behind us are pages from your Connection newspapers available all over Fairfax County. And if you stare hard enough at your screen, I believe you'll be able to read some of the stories in this week's paper. Don't stare too hard because that would mess with your eyes, right?
Right. And you should be staring at us because we're such beautiful specimens.
Exactly.
Of kind.
Especially Jeff over here.
Of course.
Very stout young cello deck. Want to just make mention of the folks that make this show possible every single week. I'm talking about the underwriters of the Fairfax Sports Report. Quality Care Ford Service Center, conveniently located in Fairfax, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. Well, boys, let's get right into the thick of things and start reviewing last week's football action. A couple surprises here and there, a couple of games that will have meeting that carries over to this week's games. Want to begin first. Centerville defeated West Potomac 54-28. 28 was probably the big surprise in this game.
It was a little surprising, and it didn't all come in the second half. I think there was a couple turnovers early on that West Potomac was able to convert into touchdowns, but Centerville continues to score at will. Andrew Morgan had 5 more touchdowns this week, so that in the last 2 weeks he has 10 touchdowns for the Wildcats running the ball, and he's only a sophomore, so he's kind of shouldering the load over there, and they have a big game coming up this week against Westfield, so this was kind of a tune-up for them. This is going to be their first big test. 2 or 3 big tests.
Absolutely, and obviously Centerville has really gained a lot of attention because of the offensive numbers they put up with Morgan and Dose and Dudzik and guys like that. Defensively, there's been so much. We're going to obviously cover the Westfield-Centerville game pretty extensively later in the show, but there's been so much discussion about Westfield having problems defensively. Has Centerville's defense sort of been overlooked in that department, or is this sort of just a blip on the radar screen for them?
I think this is a little blip. I think they have given up around 52 points in 4 games. So, it's not as great as Robinson, who's given up I think less than 15. Oakton is pretty much known for their defense, and Westfield's played pretty good defense so far. So, I don't think their defense is as strong as it was back 4 or 5 years ago when that really took them to the state title in 2000. But I think they've played well enough to be a formidable foe.
Mm-hmm. Is this the first week they've scored under 60 points? What's going on?
I believe 1 week they scored under it, but it was barely under it. They've scored over 50 points in all of their games.
The wheels are coming off. So.
Yeah.
They're in trouble over there.
Chantilly defeated Madison 20-14. We do the pigskin prognosticators in the Connection newspapers every week. When I picked this game, and I picked Chantilly, right there, I looked at this game and I said to myself, Chantilly is at a point now in its program where you can see you're not worried about them playing these Division 5 teams. They can beat these teams now. When they go up against these other teams in the Concord District, that becomes sort of an iffy scenario. But I think that they've regained enough stature. They've righted the ship to the point where you're no longer worried, in other words, when you start playing these Madison teams. 20-14, maybe a little smaller spread than I thought it was going to be as far as margin of victory, but definitely a good win for the Chargers.
I was there, and it was a close game, but it was kind of played in one half, and then the second half, Chantilly got up 20-0 in the first half, and a little bit surprising because Nathan Warwick, their starting quarterback, was hurt, so he wasn't able to play. Sophomore quarterback Austin Decker actually filled in, very admirably for them. Finished the game with 209 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 through the air. Got them into the lead, and then because Chantilly wasn't able to run the ball very effectively, Madison, who had turned the ball over a couple times in the first half, was able to get back, got a couple touchdowns, and was actually driving for the game-winning touchdown late when Warren Anderson, the quarterback, fumbled on the 1-yard line. So it was a heartbreaking game for Madison, but for Chantilly to move, they moved to 3-1. Last year they were 0-10. So they're gonna struggle more when they get in district, but this is another good win for them.
Right.
Who do you start now? Is the starter hurt?
He had a separated shoulder, so I don't think he's going to be out for the remainder of the season. He should be able to get in there pretty soon. But Decker looks like a guy who could, if need be, he could continue to play and thrive there.
Quarterback controversy at Chantilly.
Oh,
Not the first we've heard.
Yeah, as if they needed any more controversy over there based on what's happened in the last year. Edison defeated Stewart 59-8. Probably could have been a wider margin of victory if they tried, but 59-8. Justin Smith now 260 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns, and Devin Clark 487 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns on the season. This is an offensive machine that keeps churning. I don't think this score surprised anybody. It should be noted that Keone Kyle also went over 100 yards in this game rushing, and those 3 names, you're going to hear a lot about them for the rest of the season, along with the quarterback, Lloyd over there. Sean Lloyd, rather. I was about to say Greg Lloyd. He obviously is not the quarterback.
Came out of retirement.
Sean Lloyd. This is a team that's just going to be able to put up points against whomever they play, and this shouldn't really surprise anyone.
And I think it's because they have a multifaceted attack that they're probably the strongest Division 5 team. Mm-hmm. You look at some of the other strong teams. I think Loudoun Valley is pretty deep as well. But some teams maybe like Jefferson, who Matt Wong gets all the attention there, and Stonebridge and some teams like that. Edison's the complete package. And they've already played up and beat some Division 6 teams. So they're number 1 in Division 5 for a reason. Right,
and they go into the bye week undefeated and looking pretty strong. Mount Vernon and Fairfax, a game that was sort of a tricky one because you had the Rebels traveling to Mount Vernon, never an easy place to play, and they were obviously winless going into this game, but they get their first win, 35-21 over Mount Vernon. This is now 2 good, solid games for Kyle Schmidt at quarterback. He's playing well. He had about 72 total yards in the game. A kid by the name of Benedict, big running back, big fullback for them, played very well in this game. He's a great 2-way player and had well over 100 yards rushing in this game. So it's good to see them get off the schneid. Mount Vernon, the struggles sort of continue there in Coach Glenn's first year. But Fairfax, 35-21 in this game.
I think 35 points is more than the Rebels scored in their first 3 games combined.
Pretty much,
so I know we were talking last week about how they were struggling offensively, so maybe this will get them headed in the right direction.
See them give up 21 points to Mount Vernon tells you a little something about their defense too, because I know Mount Vernon's been having some trouble getting that offense going as well, so could speak to their defensive abilities as well.
Could. It's Falls Church 27-3 over South County. Now the interesting thing in this game, if you're like me and you're looking at that South County schedule and you're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to get a win this season in their first varsity season with Coach Pete Bendorf, their run defense is coming along a little bit quicker than maybe people thought it would. Now, granted, against Falls Church throws the ball over the field. Running the football is not really a priority for them, especially when they know they can pass all over the Stallions' defense. But in talking to Coach Bendorf this week, as we see some highlights from this game, their run defense is getting a little better overall, and that's a good sign for a young team. When you start looking at facets of this team and it's getting a little better here and there, it gives you some hope. Now, Falls Church is a team, as we see here, Joey Collins throwing the ball for a completion there. This is a team that can throw the ball all over the field. They've got a lot of weapons offensively.
Nice move.
Yeah, exactly. And they're a team that's going to be able to put up points on the board against a team like South County, who obviously defensively isn't as strong as some of the other teams on Falls Church's schedule.
And I know you were talking about the run defense for South County. I was, catching some of the highlights of this game, last week, and when you look at some of the kids that are playing on South County's line, you'd say, hey, that could be playing defensive back on another team. He looks so small, but the fact that they are playing so well, these kids are going to get bigger, they're going to get stronger, in the next season, coming up. So it speaks well for them.
South County's quarterback Jay Rawley is sort of emerged as their first offensive star. He's been able to throw the ball a little bit, run the ball a little bit. He's sort of been their highest total yardage earner in these games. You see here the Falls Church offense, as you see them spread out 3 wide receivers to the right, and a little razzle-dazzle there. I guess when you're playing South County, you can get away with that sort of thing. Like to see them pull that against Edison. But you have to feel good. I mean, South County giving up 27 points to Falls Church, who you know probably went into this game looking to blow them away, is sort of a good sign, I think.
Right, and I mean that's 3 games where South County hasn't been shut out. They've been able to put points on the board, and I think it's more that some teams around the county haven't done that consistently. So
quarterback Joey Collins for Falls Church is 39 of 80 this season for 652 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. I imagine that Coach Parker probably wants to see that last number drop a little bit.
Yeah, those interceptions are you can get away with them playing the likes of South County, but when you're getting playoff time and trying to get in playoff positioning, you don't want to be throwing the ball to the other team.
Falls Church is 2-1 on the season and 1-0 in the national district. A good little pass there, huh? Well, in theory.
Looked like Jeremy Shockey out there on Sunday night.
Uh-oh.
Hey.
Man, sign that kid up for the soccer team.
I'll tell you right there. It's not so bad.
That's straight out of 5th grade kickball.
That's awesome. Very good. Well, I wonder if it was a spinner, if you could have picked it up and thrown it back.
No.
But, South County, I remember talking to Bill Renner before the season, the West Springfield coach, and he told me that, by the end of the season, South County might be a little respectable, and they're going to take their lumps. This is another game, just like that first game against McLean, where they made a bunch of mistakes in the first quarter. This was another game where they made some mistakes. They helped out the Jaguars in a big way, and you're going to be able to track the maturity of this program by the number of mistakes they don't make in later games.
And it could be worse. Right now, they have the same record as West Springfield, who we thought was going to be up there in the district standings.
Indeed.
So not horrible.
Indeed. So there you go. South County is now, as you mentioned, 0-3 on the season, 0-1 in the district. So we'll see how they progress. They are the Mighty Stallions in their first season under Pete Bendorf. Hayfield 28-25, triple overtime victory over Lake Braddock in a game the Hawks had to win.
And a game that I think we both that was our one loss last week, and it came down to the wire, triple overtime.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought it? I mean, to have these two teams not only combine to put up 53 points in a game, but a triple overtime game, a pretty exciting one at that. Should be mentioned that Alonzo Cleot, who was sort of the primary running option for the Hawks, was injured in the first quarter of this game. Didn't hear anything about his status this week from the program. We'll see whether or not he's playing this week against West Potomac. Evan Eo, though, they've been waiting for him to kind of make his big move and take over a game. He certainly did it against Lake Braddock. This was a game that the Hawks had to win. They come out, they get the job done, and they're 1-3 on the season after playing the murderer's row the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, like you just said, I think it was the only game they could have won within their first 4 between playing Centerville, Robinson, and Westfield. So they have a tough one this week against West Potomac. West Potomac went in and pretty much destroyed Mount Vernon last week. 2 weeks ago. So I mean, I think this is going to be another good game between Hayfield and West Potomac.
Mm-hmm. Get one in triple overtime. It could be the thing that kind of sparks you, gets you off that losing mentality, and get you, kids get a big win in triple overtime. I mean, you believe, you just stick with it long enough, and it may be one game situation, but that translates to the season. Stick with it long enough, and you may come out on top. So.
There you go. Lake Braddock loses a close one here. They are 1-2 on the season, of course, after going 0-10 last season, and they are at T.C. Williams in a game that's going to be played at Episcopal High School this Saturday. It's T.C.'s homecoming, so we'll be interested to see what comes out of that game, because T.C., obviously, as we'll see later on, is coming off a loss. Herndon and Parkview. Now, this is one of those funky 31-team region kind of out-of-region games.
It certainly was funky.
Yeah, Parkview, a double-A team, Herndon, a triple-A team. As you noted, BJ, in your story this week, they are literally miles apart,
yes,
and figuratively miles apart.
I was at the game. I had the pleasure of watching Herndon just, put together a really good string of offense. Zay Lopez, the quarterback, threw for 3 touchdowns, and Chris Thompson, only a junior running back, came out and ran for 183 yards. So they just did everything well, but that's expected when you play a double-A team. And though they're close in range, 3.4 miles apart, it's more of a rivalry for those two teams to play than when they play some other national district teams, right, and that sort of thing. So, they were happy to see that they got the win. Chris Thompson was excited, but look, then you turn around and you've got Robinson. Obviously we'll get to that in our preview talk, but they shouldn't get too high on themselves. It was a good game. They put a lot of good offense together. Parkview, on the other hand, I know it's far away, but what a good Double-A team. I know it doesn't look too good on paper, 49-7, but they've got a new coach there. They've got a running back who's a young guy. Jeff, you've got a chance to cover them a whole bunch. Not even Andy Hill, the new coach over there, not even a game he had the pleasure of setting up. This was set up before he even got to town. So
yeah, if he had his druthers, probably would be playing a Triple-A team.
It's a tough assignment. Come in your first year, and then you got a Triple-A team on your schedule. You're a Double-A team. You're still trying to figure out what you got. But I did like a couple things I saw out of them. Some sterling kids out there running some fake punts, some fake field goals. So it was an interesting game. 49-7 really doesn't tell the story of the game. Parkview played well, but Herndon obviously came out on top. Look for Zay Lopez to keep it up, though. But Robinson, boy, I'll tell you, they're gonna be keying in on that game.
Yeah, we'll definitely be covering that later in the show. Meanwhile, in the WAC, Jefferson 55, Southlakes 43. Man, oh man! I mean, now you were a little surprised by Southlakes putting up as many points as they did. Yes, no, maybe so.
I wasn't surprised. I said last week, this is going to be the game that Southlakes is going to come out and they're going to score. I guess because I had the pleasure of watching Jefferson come out and put an offensive showcase. Quarterback Matt Wong ran all over and threw all over Langley's defense. So, but their defense, Langley's offense was able to produce. So I knew Southlakes was going to be able to produce offensively. It was just a matter of stopping Wong. They were down 35-0 at the half. Coach Ellenberger got on some of his guys. He felt that there was a questionable play in that first half where he thought they may have let him march it in, and those kids responded. He got on them. They came out and put out 44 points in the second half. He said Mike Forna had the game of his life. 3 touchdowns. It's good to see a team come out and finally they've been shut out all season. They've played some really tough teams and just come out and get out on the board.
Maybe a case of Jefferson calling off the dogs a little bit early and then almost having that dog bite him in the butt.
Bite him in the butt. It's a sports writer for you. Southlakes is now 0-3, 0-1 in the Liberty. Jefferson 2-0 in the Liberty, 3-0 overall, and cruising along. Speaking of cruising along, Robinson is 68-14 over the McLean Highlanders. Robinson's homecoming game, and it's the Lucas Caparelli show as always. And but I want to mention their defense. Their defense to me is the thing that people always overlook about these Robinson teams. Once again, their defense is doing the job. McLean's points came in the fourth quarter. Up until they had a 68-0 lead at one point in this game. Robinson is defensively better than I thought they'd be going into their Concord district schedule.
And I mean, if you look at the top 4, it looks like all of them can score. All of them are putting up 40, 50, even 60 points a game for Centerville. So I think early on, I think that's why we have Robinson as our top ranked team, because their defense has shown to be the best. And they're going to get some big tests coming up. They've played some teams like Fairfax and Hayfield in the first couple of weeks. But I mean, I'm interested to see this this Herndon game, because Herndon's been scoring, been putting up some big points on the scoreboard. So it's interesting to see how they'll play against a team that should be able to at least move the ball on them. A good Division 6 team in the Concord district.
Well, not like Robinson needs any help scoring, but I talked to Coach Rivera over at McLean this week, and he said they certainly helped him. I mean, they gave him the ball 5 times. You just couldn't hang on to the ball, and you can't make mistakes when you play a team like Robinson.
Right.
I don't think anybody had McLean pegged as winning that game. But 68 points, we've seen them score 60 already this year, but McLean certainly helped them, and they've just got to buckle up and hang on to the football. Absolutely,
and Robinson had 3 interceptions in this game. They had a couple of fumble recoveries and 2 sacks. So that defense, we mentioned Lucas Caparelli just before. Every time this kid touches the ball, it goes a pretty good distance down the field. He's averaging 14.4 yards per carry and 47.8 yards per reception. That's pretty darn good right there. That's almost half the field every time he touches the football, catching it.
I think it's just a case of Mark Bendorf finding a way to get that kid in space, letting him use his speed and his his ability to kind of break tackles, and against some of these teams, all you're going to have to do is beat 1 or 2 kids to move it down the field. I think if you look at the list of our leading rushers, a lot of these kids are averaging 8, 9, 10 yards a carry. So it's something that he's probably one of the best at getting into space and using that to his advantage.
Lucas Caparelli's best friend or biggest fan right now has to be quarterback Matt Goff. I mean, think about it. He's got 17 completions, right? and he's got 491 yards on 17 completions and 5 touchdowns. That's
and it's not a case of him just like throwing at the ball 50 yards and getting it caught. He's throwing these 5-10 yard patterns and letting his talent work.
Well, it's also a tribute to the coaching staff at Robinson. Year in and year out, they always seem to have the same statistics on this team, and the quarterbacks don't ever throw the ball more than they need to, and they don't try to force it into places where they don't need to throw it, and they just know when to hit you, and they set it up perfectly, and they call the right play, and the quarterbacks make the right decision, whether it's Goff or Hardigan or Gully before him, and every single year they've always got these enormous yards per catch, yards per carry numbers, and it never fails to amaze me how well coached this team is.
They don't ask their quarterbacks to be the savior of the team.
Right.
Be capable. Don't make too many mistakes, and you're gonna put up good numbers.
But at the same time, I remember when Brian Gully was the quarterback. When he took over that job, people were like, oh well, what's going to happen with Robinson this year? And lo and behold, he winds up making some extraordinarily big throws in the playoffs for that team on their way to a state championship. And you can never underestimate how valuable these quarterbacks are. They're not just guys who are handing the ball off to guys like Caparelli and Campbell and guys like that. They're guys that make big plays when they need to, but they never have to make a big play unless they need to, and I think that's the key for Robinson.
I think once they get more towards the playoffs, and they're going to need to make some more plays. So it's not like the coaching staff's totally handcuffing them either.
And since we're here on the Marshall set tonight, and by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but these pillars, not real stone. I don't know if you noticed that. It's true.
Hey, don't knock on my treehouse now.
I'm sorry. Woodson defeats Marshall 22-19, handing the Mighty Statesmen their first loss on the season. You gave Marshall a pretty good shot in this game.
Yeah. Well, I guess when you look at it, Marshall's really risen this year. And look, they played some easy teams in the beginning, let's be honest, with who they played. They came out 3-0. But you look at Woodson, on the other hand, and they didn't come out and really do what Woodson did last year. So you see, it's maybe just a case of Marshall getting better and Woodson maybe falling a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it just proved to be a good matchup, 22-19. The Statesmen came out and did what they could, but it was time for them to come back to earth a little bit. They're 3-0. It's the first time they've been 3-0 since anyone can remember. We've been over it, but it's time for them to come back to earth a little bit. And it would have been a great story had they prevailed over Woodson. But hey, they got the rest of the season to get that 4th win.
There you go.
And they'll already be 2 games better than they were last year if they do.
Such a glass half full kind of guy, aren't you? Woodson, obviously, in this game, the big story was quarterback Jeff Byer getting hurt. Backup quarterback comes in, they start sharing snaps and get the job done despite that adversity. So it kind of shows a little bit of character on their part as well in that game. So Woodson now on the season is 2-2, 1-0 in the Liberty, and the mighty Marshall Statesmen 0-1 in Liberty and 3-1 overall. So see if they can get back to their winning ways this week. Westfield 41 and Langley, a team where everybody thought would be near the top of the Liberty District this year, 7. BJ?
I just don't. You can't listen to me anymore.
All right, obviously.
all my predictions. No, but Langley has just not developed. That's the story that at the beginning of the season, it was a size thing. Hey, we're so big. Hey, we're going to get to the ball and we're going to shut people down, and they just haven't gotten there. They've tried new things every week. They threw the ball a lot against Jefferson. This week they ran the ball a lot against Westfield. And it was just a case of, talk to Coach Howard and over at Langley. He said it was a case of, hey, things were getting out of hand. We had to keep the ball on the ground. And Josh Siegel ran for, I think, 129 yards. So he had a pretty good game running for Langley. But, the story obviously was Evan Royster. Went bananas, 235 yards and, I think it was 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, obviously, when you have a kid like that and you can't tackle, which they couldn't do against Jefferson's Matt Wong, if you can't tackle and you can't wrap somebody up, of course they're going to have a big night like that.
Royster now 13 rushing touchdowns on the season, 17.5 yards per carry for Westfield, and that's usually in about 3/4 worth of work, isn't it?
Yeah, and in some cases he's not even playing at all in the second half. And to play in 4 games and only have 53 carries. I think there were games last year where he was getting 25, 26 carries. So he told me this week he feels much more fresh than he did at this point last year, and that's bad news for opposing defenses who are going to see him in the coming weeks.
Indeed. And finally, in the review, Oakton 28-16 over TC Williams. This was TC's first big test. You talk about Marshall's first big test with Woodson. This was TC's first big test, and they played respectably. I think that score is right around where you'd expect it to be in an Oakton TC game. But again, the Cougars come out, they get the job done, and remain one of the top teams in the Northern region this year.
It's grit, and I mean, honestly, they do it a different way every week. That's why I like this team so much. I mean, they did it on special teams this week. Talked to Coach Thompson over at Oakton. That's what they're really excited about. And a good quote he gave me was, "You got to get an edge somewhere on these Concord teams." And now they're going up against Chantilly. We'll get to that in our preview time. But going up against Chantilly, it's good to know you've got your offense. Obviously, everybody knows Oakton has a defense, and now your special teams develops. You've got so many weapons. Keith Payne can run the ball on offense. We all know that, but he also had an 85-yard run off a kickoff for a touchdown. So when you know you can do it so many different ways, it just gives you confidence going into that tough Concord.
Absolutely. All right, let's focus on this week's amazing docket of Northern Region football games. Let's begin with a game that I'm going to attend this Friday night and cover for the Connection newspapers, a game that I find absolutely fascinating, which is Fairfax, which got its first win. It's now 1-3, playing West Springfield, which is 0-3 right now. Here's the fascinating part. Fairfax's coach, Matt Shannon, they have an assistant coach and another assistant coach, all with very strong ties to West Springfield. And before the season, this was a game they had circled on the calendar. There's no question about that. They're downplaying it now a little bit, but there's no question they want to go into Springfield and win this game. What I think is very intriguing about it is the fact that West Springfield is 0-3 right now. They need this win desperately, and this is going to be an extraordinarily competitive game between these two teams. Both teams need this win in a big, big way. Fairfax obviously has a little bit more on the line as far as wanting to beat your old alma mater in Shannon's case, but this is a game that I'm really looking forward to watching.
And I think West Springfield should be able to get this win if they play up to their capabilities, and I don't know if they've done that in the first couple weeks. Maybe they have, and they've played teams that were just better than them. But Peter Lalich is a great quarterback. They've been able to move the ball through the air. He's completing a lot of passes. Maybe haven't found the end zone as much as they've liked. But they had a tough loss to Stonebridge in week 1, tough loss to Edison, in week 2. But I think talent-wise they should be able to beat Fairfax. But who knows? I thought they were going to beat Stonebridge in week 1, and it's kind of been a tough road since then for the Spartans.
I know, and I thought they were going to beat Edison, and I thought they were going to beat Annandale. But
do you think that's a case though that you come out in your first week and there's such high expectations, and then you lose to a team like Stonebridge, who is better than everybody thought they were, but at that time nobody knew it? And is that deflating? Do you think? Is that kind of like uh-oh?
I think the uh-oh comes when you lose your third game. I don't think that you can necessarily go uh-oh losing to Edison, but I think losing like they did to Annandale in overtime, they lost 40-34 this week in overtime, then you go uh-oh. Then you're like, well, wait a second here. Losing to Edison, you might expect that. Edison's a darn good football team. Losing to Stonebridge, maybe they're an X factor, maybe things went a little haywire in that game. Week 1, you never know. Losing to Annandale, week 3, district game, oh boy.
And I think what the problem has been is defensively they just haven't played very good defense. They're not stopping the run, and if you can't stop the run in football, I mean you're not going to face a whole lot of teams that can pass the ball really effectively. So it should be able to start to play run defense, and if you can't do that, you're going to be in trouble.
Right, and obviously, like we said before, both of these teams do have some difficulties on defense. They're both susceptible on defense to some pretty big plays. Peter Lalich on the season, 843 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
So a lot of yards passing, but not finding the end zone. 3 touchdowns in 3 games.
Exactly. So it should be a very interesting game. Langley at Marshall. Now, your Marshall Statesmen are going to have to win this game. This is a game now that they are supposed to win based on records and expectations.
Yeah, they're back down to earth now, and they're back in the Liberty. And obviously, the Woodson game was a Liberty game, and it was their first district game. So maybe they got their bearings now, found out what they could and could not do. They did it against a Woodson team. They put up some points still. Langley hasn't impressed me on offense that much. They've done some different things, but they haven't really stuck to one specific thing. Usually they're being a run offense. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Are they going to run, or are they going to use quarterback Chad Joyce, who can throw to his favorite target, which is Matt Blessing? Those two can get it done, but then you've got a guy who can run the ball, Josh Siegel. They've had 3 other backs, run the ball all season. So in Marshall's case, are they going to be able to overcome last week's loss, or are they hanging their head saying, okay, we're Marshall? Marshall has proven themselves to be a different team, and it's you don't want to see either team lose right now because they've had a rough season in both of them, but it's tough to pick this one. I guess I'd have to go Marshall.
Well, I think that in this game, you'd have to go Marshall. As crazy as it sounds, because Langley is a very quality football team, and I think that once they start playing competition that's a little bit more on their level, you just don't know. I mean, you expect them to be a little bit better than they are.
Yeah. It's been deflating this year. I really bought into the Langley thing, and hopefully they'll develop, and they've got so many things they spark every week. It looks so different, but if everything comes together, and like we said last year, Langley played Marshall in the fourth week. It was the same week as this year. Langley started off the season 0-3. They beat Marshall 44-0, I believe the score was last year, and then they went on to win 6 of 8 games. They lost the playoff game to Winston, and they split the Liberty District title. So it could be the spark that each team needs. They're both looking for that spark.
Exactly. The next game we're going to look at, Madison at McLean. Now, here's a game where I definitely am backing Madison this game. Jeff, you also selected Madison in this game. BJ, you are, my friend, the odd duck. Why is McLean going to win this game?
Well, looking at my record from what I've picked this season, which is below some of our other reporters who aren't even in sports, don't listen to me, actually, folks. Now, honestly, I think it's McLean's turn to win a game. That's really just the easiest way to put it. They got beat up by Robinson last week. They faced a really tough team last week. So, they may come out and say, hey, this is a team we can beat. Let's go do it. Let's get it done. They got some weapons over there that Eric Smith. He can run the ball. But then they've got Brendan Griffin can also run the ball. Ran for 111 yards against Robinson, by the way. That's a pretty good defense to run against. So if he can have that type of offensive output against the Madison defense, which is not Robinson-esque, if you will, I see McLean coming out on top.
I'll say this for McLean. With James Pasco, a quarterback, Smith, Griffin, they've got big players. I saw them against Yorktown, and these are kids that can obviously break off a big run, can complete a big pass in a big spot. And that's something that had me worried if I'm a Madison fan.
Yeah.
Madison is a defense that could be susceptible for something like that. That being said, I think Madison is a more complete football team. I think they're going to come away with a victory in this game.
I mean, Madison against Chantilly last week was able to move the ball on offense. They ran pretty much 3 plays. Run right, run left, and run up the middle. And they still, were moving the ball on Chantilly. It's just the fact that they fumbled the ball twice in the first half, and both of those led to Chantilly touchdowns.
And isn't that beautiful football, really?
It
2 yards in a cloud of dust.
Our photographer told me it was really great football to try to get pictures for. So I think Madison is definitely strong. I mean, they got kids that can move on the line. So I favor them.
Exactly. Now the next game we're looking at is a real interesting one, and that's Mount Vernon at Loudoun Valley. And the reason it's interesting is the at Loudoun Valley part. Now, basically, Mount Vernon and Loudoun Valley, it's like the distance between Antarctica and Communist China in Virginia terms.
China.
Because Loudoun Valley, you can't really get there easily from Mount Vernon, can you?
I mean that's a hike.
That's a hike.
You're getting on, the Greenway is. I mean, once you get there, it's another 20, 30
exactly.
miles.
So we always like to talk about home field advantage, and some schools have it and some schools don't.
Yeah.
This
Valley's
is a home field advantage. Loudoun Valley has got a home field advantage. Those kids are going to cramp up on the bus on the way there.
And beside the home field advantage, I think they're a much better team than Mount Vernon. They played real strong. Probably should have beat Stonebridge last week. They lost the game in the last 3 minutes of the game. So I think Loudoun Valley's a team to watch in the National District.
Oakton at Chantilly is a very interesting game to me for one reason, which is that after Chantilly, Oakton's got the big 3, and you cannot look past the Chargers in this spot. I don't think they will. Oakton's a little bit smarter than that, but you got to be sure you don't, because Chantilly is good enough this season to bite you on the butt, like you said.
I think that they are good enough. Chantilly's certainly shown they're capable in the passing game. The one thing that I think that is really going to hurt them is they have not shown an ability to run the ball. I think in 3 games this year, their leading rusher has gotten around 15 yards. And that's not good. So, and Oakton's a defense that's kind of built to stop the run. Last year in the playoffs, they held Royster to 59 yards on 19 carries. So, Chantilly's going to probably have to pass the ball to win this game. And whether it's Decker or whether it's Warwick, you're going to have a real good game. And I just don't know if the Chargers are going to be able to do it.
Well, Oakton's got a great defense, and if a sophomore quarterback's coming out, it's different when you're playing, Madison and when you're playing Oakton. And obviously, Austin Decker had a great game last week, but I think Oakton defense is going to swallow him up. We mentioned Donald Murphy a lot on this show, but he's got another interception last week, and he's on his way to getting a lot more. I think if sophomore quarterback Austin Decker is going to be throwing the ball. But Joe Thompson is not looking past this team. He says they gave him a real hard fight every time. 2 years ago it was a difficult game. They barely squeaked it out. And he said the kids grow up in the same neighborhoods. It is kind of a rivalry game. So it's going to be interesting to see. But you don't want to write Chantilly off. But like I said earlier in the season, I got Oakton coming out of this district. So if they're going to do it, they got to put away those Chantillies to get to that meat of that Concord.
It should be mentioned that in the much heralded pigskin prognostication box in the Connection newspapers, 9 prognosticators, 8 of them take Oakton in this game.
Wow.
And I don't know what John Smith was thinking.
Well, John Smith is a man who I would not ask him to explain his picks. His picks are mystical, and we should all just accept them for what they are.
He can't throw a football, so I don't expect him to to pick.
He can lay you out on defense, though.
That's
I'll
right.
tell you that.
If he can catch me.
It's true. Robinson at Herndon. Every season it seems like Herndon's Robinson's first big regional game. Well, obviously, the Good Counsel game was their first big game of the season.
And every year they
destroy them, and I can't imagine it's going to be any different this season.
It's I think that just speaks to how good these upper tier teams are. Herndon is a real good team, and they're laying people out. Outside of the top 4, but I mean Robinson is just on the. They are in the upper echelon.
Yes.
They are leading the upper echelon.
Of the echelons, they're in the top one.
That's right.
They have their own echelon.
Oh, do they? The Robinson
Yes,
echelon? Is it a Robinson-esque echelon?
Yes, and it has its own zip code,
Really?
to be honest with you. Yes.
Fantastic.
Herndon's going to come out. This is the game they always get, they look to, and it's a big test for them. But, it's like you said, they're a real good team in a great district, and it's the same story every year. I just think they have more weapons where they may put out a better offensive output against a Robinson team this year, and they may surprise a couple people about what they can do offensively. They've got a bunch of different weapons, but it's hard to see them getting by Robinson.
Robert E. Lee hosting South County Secondary. This is a Patriot District game. Lee is coming off a bye, so they should be well rested. We mentioned before South County's run defense is getting a little bit better. It's going to have to be very good this game. Greg Jones at quarterback, Brandon Cameron at running back, 2 very good offensive options on the ground for Lee, who doesn't really throw the ball much. So this game is going to be won in the trenches.
I think you saw on film South County is not very big on the line, so I don't know why Lee would even try to go to the air. Keep pounding it on the ground. Wear these smaller kids out. And get a lead and stay there.
There you go. Lee right now is 1-2 on the season, and this could be a very big game for them. Going 1-0 in the Patriot District, heading into their first season in that district schedule with all of the other contenders later on in the season. We move on to Thomas Jefferson at Stonebridge, a fascinating game, isn't it, Jeff?
And another game, where Jefferson's going to have to, get on the bus and head out to Ashburn. This is a great game. Jefferson has one of the top offenses. Matt Wong is one of the top quarterbacks, and Stonebridge is a team that is pretty tricky on offense. Has been playing pretty good defense. Kind of survived, against Loudoun Valley last week, but this is a team, Stonebridge, they find ways to win, games where other teams, usually would find games to lose, or, if they get down, they don't show an ability to come back. I think 3 times in the last 3 years they've had these kind of last-second victories, and it's kind of spurred them on throughout the season. So I think this is going to be a real good game. I think Jefferson's a little too strong, but I mean, who knows? When you put up 44 points on their defense, and you're a South Lakes team, and you hadn't scored a point coming into that game. Who knows? I mean, it could be a track meet.
Indeed. It at face value, you'd expect that Stonebridge would be able to handle Jefferson based on how well they played West Springfield in Week 1. But obviously, the difference is that Matt Wong can run the ball a little bit better than Peter Lawlage can.
And Mickey Thompson, spoke to that fact. Because I asked him, are you gonna bring the house? You gonna blitz? You're gonna try to get him? He's like, we had success against Lawage, but Wong can move. I mean, so if they bring a lot of guys and miss, then they're going to be in trouble because Wong can get down the field in a hurry.
I picked Stonebridge in this game. I think giving Mickey Thompson a week to really break down Jefferson's offense, he's going to be able to figure out some things. And also, you can't discount the fact that this is a road game that takes Jefferson from the friendly confines of the Annandale area all the way out to Loudoun County, and that could definitely play into it as well. So that should be a very interesting game and a huge game, actually, in the Liberty District. That's going to really give us some inside track as to who might be the front runner in that district this year, because Jefferson, Stonebridge, Woodson now, you have to say, are right now the 3 favorites in that district, depending on what happens in some games this week. So we will keep our eyes on that. WT Woodson and South Lakes, another Liberty District game. You happen to think that South Lakes has a real big chance in this one, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's their shot. You know, they're still talking playoffs over there at South Lakes. I think that's a long shot, but you know, if they're going to do it, they got to do it now. We saw what Marshall did against a Woodson team. So South Lakes came out and had a big game this week, put out a whole bunch of offense. 44 points. They got a kid, Mike Forner, like we said. If he gets out in the open against Woodson, it could be another track meet. Actually, Forner does run track, so and not lost on South Lakes is what happened last year when they played Woodson. So it was a blowout last year, and they remember that. And Woodson's a little bit down. Mm-hmm. They're up in the rankings right now. They're in second place, but I don't know if each team, South Lakes being at the bottom of the district right now, I don't know if each team actually belongs where they are in the rankings. I think we'll see that this week. I think South Lakes has a shot here.
And you bring up an interesting point. I remember talking to Coach Jerry Pannoni at Woodson before the season, and he said, not only do we have a target on our backs because we're the defending regional champions in Division 5, although they're Division 6 this year, he said we also have a target on our backs because we beat teams pretty badly last year. And it wasn't like we were trying to run up the score or anything, but we definitely put a hurt on some teams, South Lakes being one of them. So this is one of those games where you might see some revenge being extracted on a down Woodson team this year, at least down from what they were last year. West Potomac at Hayfield is a very interesting game in the Patriot District. Depending on how healthy Hayfield is coming into this game, you could see the Wolverines win this game, move to 1-0 in the district, and continue their turnaround from last season.
Yeah, this was a game that I think it was the last game I picked, and I really didn't know what to pick. I went with Hayfield, but I'm kind of leaning towards West Potomac. I like the way they played against Mount Vernon. They were really physical, and their quarterback did a lot of damage, Chris Farquhar. So I think this is gonna come down to the wire.
I think it could, absolutely. I agree with you, my friend. Yorktown at Stewart. Stewart can't stop the run. Yorktown runs the ball really well. And I think you know the end of the story.
Oh, Stewart.
It's okay. It's okay. FSN Cox 35, game of the week. Westfield at Centerville. Jeff Graham, what do you say in this one?
This is one where I believe I picked Centerville last year and got burned on it because Evan Royster was able to run at will. Last 2 years against Centerville, he's run for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's the guy that Centerville's got to take care of. I asked Coach Skinner over at Centerville, how do you stop this kid? And he said, bluntly, I have no idea. We can try to play base defense and try to get a lot of guys to the ball. But if one kid can beat you in this region, it's him. Averaging 17 yards a carry. So even if he averages half of that, he's still getting a first down there almost every time. And for Centerville, they probably have one of the, I guess when you look at quarterback, you got Drew Dudzik, running back Andrew Morgan's got 10 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Cameron Dose is leading the league in reception, so it's a balanced offense. They run no huddle, so I think you're going to see a lot of points this week at Centerville. And this is going to tell us who right off the bat. You have Robinson and Herndon playing, Centerville and Westfield. These the winners of those 2 games are going to get a head start in this district race.
I think the real key in this game, just from looking at it a little bit this week in preparation for what really is the first big marquee matchup in the Northern Region this year, I think the key to this game is Westfield's defense. Not only in the sense that if Royster can at least do half of what he usually does, Westfield's going to score. So what Westfield needs to do is not allow Centerville to match point for point, but more importantly, Skinner's going to try to keep that ball away from Royster. The Westfield defense is going to have to come up with a way to stop Morgan and stop Dudzik from playing a bit of ground ball and clock management and keeping the ball away from the Westfield offense. So it's sort of a two-pronged problem for the Westfield defense. You can't allow Centerville to match point for point, and you can't allow them to keep the ball as much as they probably want to.
Mike Skinner said the best defense is our offense staying on the field getting first downs, keeping hold of the ball, not turning it over, and putting points on the board. Because if they're on the field, Royster's not on the field.
Exactly.
And that's the best way to defend him, not have him on the field.
But you got to take your shots. I mean, you got to put points on the board, and Royster's going to get his shots on the field regardless, because Centerville is going to score. And you, in my opinion, and I know it doesn't mean much to a lot of the coaches, you better score as much as you can. Yeah, play ball control, but get those points on the board, because Royster is going to find the open field at least twice, and it's going to happen.
Centerville hasn't had problems scoring, so far.
Yeah.
I mean, they're leading the region in scoring, but I think Centerville's more of an offense where they want to take 6, 8, 10 plays to score,
right,
and not look for the big home run,
right,
run up the middle to score.
Right, and covering games like this for the last, I sound like a crusty old sports reporter, covering games like this for the last 5 years, like I have. I think that this is the kind of game that surprisingly, like when we're out in the field on a Friday night and you're all looking for what the score is on this game, and then you find out it's like 7-3 at halftime.
Yeah.
We're all talking about how they're going to have to be matching point for point and Centerville's offense. This could easily be one of those like 14-10 kind of games.
I do think you're going to see some nervousness and some butterflies.
Some nerns.
Some nerns.
Producer, by the way.
Nern, and there's a nern
You will
spotting.
see Brian Nern actually
at that game. That's right. You will see nerns.
But you will see some nervousness. So I mean, to see a 35 game would probably be asking a lot, but I would expect to see some touchdowns.
Right. Should be a fantastic game.
Almost 8,000 people. I'm hearing 8,000, 9,000 people.
9,000 people. Come on.
Dude, it's going to be, this is
I
one of the
don't
biggest
think you're gonna,
games in the state.
It's always a big game in a state. I mean, if you're going to have 9,000 people,
I think that's including the FSN viewership.
Obviously, but hold on. If you're going to have 9,000 people for Centerville and Westfield, what happens when one of these teams plays an undefeated Robinson team? We're going to have 20,000?
Good.
I mean, outdraw the Capitals? Well, obviously.
That's not hard to do.
Not hard.
They'll put a big screen in the gym.
Okay, fair enough. Connection top 10 this week, and also the FSN top 10, I should mention. It's pretty static from the week before. Edison 5, Westfield 4, Oakton 3. There you see Centerville 2 and Robinson 1. No surprise. I mean, obviously we're going to have some movement on this thing depending on what happens. I mean, there could be the opportunity for Centerville to leapfrog Robinson if they beat Westfield handily this week, I think.
Could be, and then but if Westfield wins, do you move ahead, ahead of Oakton? How far do you drop Centerville? So it's going to be interesting, and 7 through 10, could change. That's been changing every week.
We should mention in our top 10, Stonebridge 10, T.C. Williams 9, Herndon 8, Yorktown 7, Jefferson 6, right behind Edison at 5. And this is the first week, and in going over our picks this week, we all kind of agreed, this is the first week where you don't really have a beat on things. You don't really know, other than a couple of games, what's going to happen. It's all bets are off this week because you're dealing with teams that are now, you've seen them for a few weeks, you've seen what they're capable of, and all of a sudden you've got these matchups inside districts where both teams are going to come with everything they have to get that one district win.
Right. I mean, you have some undefeated teams going head to head. You have some 0-3 teams that you think are going to win. You have some teams that are 3-0 you think aren't that good. So it's I think this week you're going to really find out who the good teams are.
All right. Well, we've only done about 3 hours of football. Let's mention some other things real quick.
There is no other things.
All right. Field hockey. Westfield loses its first game of the season to Oakton. It's a district loss. And that's a bit of a surprise. I mean, it looked like Westfield might have been the class of that district, and Oakton comes and not only beats them, but beats Robinson also within the span of a week. So Oakton now probably the class of the Concord district right now in field hockey.
I would still say Westfield probably is the best team, but because they're only playing every team once, it's hard to say. You're not going to get that rematch.
Well, let me ask you, Westfield boy, who beat Westfield?
Right.
Was it Oakton?
No. But, I mean, I think...
Well, yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but, I mean, you have to take into account the whole season. I mean...
This is why we don't do field hockey.
Yeah, precisely. All right. So, volleyball, I want to give a little shout-out to the Lee Lancers girls volleyball team. Defeated Lake Braddock in their first Patriot District match this week and swept them 3-0. And also the Hayfield Hawks girls volleyball team wins for the first time in 3 years in the Patriot District, beat South County, but still that's a pretty big win because South County had a lot of players from Hayfield from last year, so it's always good to see that sort of simmering rivalry between those two schools, and Hayfield gets the win there.
And just a little volleyball extra here. Just want to throw in McLean's rebirth. They were one game last year, and they're coming back and they're 6-1 right now. So you got to give it up to Coach Stoddard out there getting those girls in gear.
Were you paid to say that?
Actually, yeah.
Oh no, payola scandal. Golf, Jeff Graham, Chantilly comes away with the win on the team
And the team and the individual, Gabe Laney is a sophomore at Chantilly, was able to beat defending individual champion Zach Spies of Westfield, won on the second playoff hole. Heard it was a great match, and Chantilly had won the Concord District title. So Chantilly and Westfield will move on to the state playoffs, which will be held October 11th and 12th at Piedmont Country Club in Haymarket, Virginia.
All right, and we have some time here now that we've covered all of the news and notes in the northern region. I want to mention an interesting story I saw in our Connection newspapers this week, and that would be a story out of Arlington County. The headline is "School Board Bans Sodas, Sports Drinks," and it's a story about how students in Arlington County will no longer be able to purchase sodas and sports drinks in school vending machines after the Arlington School Board voted last week to ban the beverages in an effort to stem the tide of adolescent obesity. Now, the sodas you can understand. I mean, kids sucking down sodas for an entire day is not exactly the healthiest thing in the world, but the sports drinks is interesting. And according to the article by Seth Rosen, sports drinks were removed because they contain high levels of sodium, sugar, and additives and are not suitable for everyday consumption, though they possess benefits following strenuous exercise, school officials said. So my question for you boys is, do they still have gym class in Arlington County Public Schools? Because to me, I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, I didn't exactly have access to Gatorade vending machines after gym class.
It was the water fountain.
It was
nothing
fountain.
else.
Exactly. Now I don't like to brag, but I was quite the gym rat in high school. I loved the high school gymnasium gym class sports, whether it's dodgeball or volleyball or softball or other sports with balls. And if I had the chance to go have a tasty Gatorade after gym class, I totally would. Why would you ban this from school?
I don't know really what they're thinking. I mean, if I'm a kid and I'm not, this comes down, I'm thinking, heck, when I get home, I'm gonna have 3 Gatorades. I'm gonna have 3 pops to make up for it.
Line up your Gatorades in front of you and knock them down, huh?
I really don't know what to say.
Now, it should be said that you should not drink gigantic jugs of Gatorade if you're not necessarily participating in athletic activities.
I wouldn't come out of chemistry class and say I'm so out of it. I need a Gatorade.
I need a Gatorade because that it does have high levels of sodium and sugar and electrolytes and things like that for athletes. So you can replace the stuff you lose during athletic activity. So if you're just sitting on your hinder all day and you're down in 3 big old jugs of Gatorade, it's not healthy. That said, though, can you really equate Gatorade and Powerade and things like that with the stuff they put in soda vending machines? Like, can you look at a big old bottle of Mountain Dew and then look at a thing of Gatorade and then somehow equate them as being both very harmful to kids in high school?
To me, it's like, what are they voting on now? I mean, come on. I mean, kids, if they want to drink Gatorade, they're gonna bring it from home. All right, they're gonna bring the soda from home. Are we gonna have the soda police running around and saying you can't drink that? We're gonna have the Gatorade police, like the safety patrol wearing the little belts and taking it out of your hand. I mean, come on now. We got kids, who are going to some of these schools around here that can't afford books and it's just like, we're voting on Gatorade now. Give me a break.
I love the fact that in Arlington County Public Schools, if you're a kid in that school, you can't buy a Gatorade during the school day, but you can come in with a triple mocha double sugar lattuccino from Starbucks in the morning.
Yeah.
Grande.
Just, put it in perspective here. I mean, look, obesity is a problem in the whole country, okay, in the world, all right? But are you really going to stop obesity by taking the soda away from the kid in school? Yes, you're trying to teach them to eat healthy, but you're not going to force them to eat healthy. It's something that's got to come from home. It's something that's got to start at the family level. And, individually, kids got to take responsibility for what they're putting in their bodies. Are we going to have dare against...
You're going to see the tofu hamburger and the soy milk available at lunch now.
Give them a choice now.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, because I do agree with you, but let me say this. They don't serve prime rib in the cafeteria. They don't serve triple cheeseburgers in the cafeteria. Why? Because they want to create an environment where kids are going to grab a piece of celery once in a while, grab an apple with lunch. They do have sort of this healthy twist to cafeteria lunches that I don't think we had necessarily when we were in high school.
I remember hot dogs, hamburgers,
pizza, all kinds of really great stuff.
Awesome. Those were the days, man.
Now, but hold on. Now, isn't this just another step in that direction where they're just trying to take away the options for these kids who might might want to grab a soda instead of a milk at lunch or a water at lunch.
Oh, I'm sure it was done in goodwill and in thinking of good, ways to help children develop. But, there's so many other things you can be doing to help kids and help. I just see it as an issue where, you're taking a soda out of a kid's hand now. I don't know. To me, it's childish almost, and no pun there. But, come on. The kid wants to have a Gatorade. He's an athlete. He may need his Gatorade. Now he's got to bring it from home. Got to chuck it around all day. To me, it seems like, there's so many other issues that we could, be helping kids with. And I know obesity is a problem, and they're obviously trying to create a healthy environment. But, at least there should be a choice. Don't let me get on my soapbox right now about the American way and the American culture. Can we cue the flag swinging right now? Okay. I'll just say there should be a choice, and that's what it's about. What are you teaching kids? Yeah, you're teaching them not to go and shove down junk food, but you're teaching them that, hey, we're going to tell you what to eat, when you're going to eat it, and it's just, to me, it just seems...
Right.
Nothing like that warm orange Gatorade from home.
And besides the fact, and then of course the punchline to this whole thing is that you protect the kids inside the schools. You take away the soda, you make sure the candy's healthy, and then what happens? Oh, I don't know. Name one high school where there isn't a McDonald's within walking distance after school. You know what I mean?
Hey, it's just, you can protect them in the schools of the hall, but the minute they walk out on those streets, there's going to be some guy out there on the street with a Gatorade, and they're going to have to make a choice.
There's going to be some guys, smuggling some Gatorades in schools.
Well, that's the other. That's the other hilarious thing about this story from the connection is that, and again, I'm quoting here. Many Yorktown and Wakefield students patronized food trucks selling snacks and sodas found parked across the street from their schools.
Nice.
I know, exactly.
It's food truck?
Yeah, they got the grease trucks in front of the high school before school. Even if you ban this stuff from the high schools, you're still going to have it right as you walk in.
I'm hungry now, man.
I
want a Gatorade.
What year did we graduate high school?
I know. We're like old. It's insane. It's like a...
Do you remember
Can you even find a water fountain?
Do you remember the little pizzas that were shaped like boats? You guys remember those?
No, what?
They were shaped like little boats, like little footballs.
Like
they were flat on one side, and then they went like this, and they were round.
Did you go to the special school?
He was in communist China.
Put it this way, we weren't allowed to have scissors.
All right.
And we read the Epoch Times, actually.
Fantastic. Fairfax Sports Report, my friends. Back next week, Wednesdays at 10, Thursdays at 7, Fridays at 12 p.m. News analysis from local sports writers, Connection sports writers, and all kinds of things. FSN, Cox Communications High School Game of the Week, Westfield at Centerville, Week 5. Huge game. Sundays at 6 on Cox 35, repeats daily, 5 a.m., 6 p.m. Don't miss it. It's going to be fantastic. Dub. FairfaxSportsNetwork.com. Did I mention we have photo galleries? Please check them out. They're amazing. I want to thank Ford Quality Care Service Center, 703-383-6299, conveniently located in Fairfax, servicing all makes and models. CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257. Should be mentioned that officially, we all picked Centerville across the board, except for Rich Sanders, who took Westfield.
Well, if you look at our poll, they're second, so that's what I looked at.
Hey, Rich is drinking Haterade, if you know what I mean.
That's exactly right. Thanks for watching the Fairfax Sports Report. Please join us next week for more news, notes, analysis, and all kinds of fun. Oh, the spinning football. Where will it end? Oh, Jeff Graham wins the special prize.
I'm going long.
And there you go. Oh, fantastic. Hey, a pen. Woo! There you go, everybody.